Okay, we're picking up on the second page, I think it's the second page, excuse me, of the story on page 332. We're in that long paragraph on the second half of the page. I believe we had just talked about, excuse me, the sermon that Parson Hooper delivers the first day wearing the veil had reference to secret sin. Okay? And the language used is the subject of reference to secret sin and those sad mysteries which we hide from our nearest and dearest and would fain conceal from our own consciousness, even forgetting that the omniscient can detect them. And we could, if we wanted to, in case you're interested, by no means are you required to do this. Every time I teach this, I don't mean every year, I mean every class session, different things jump out at me. So they're never exactly the same. There's about 75% overlap, and then 25%, I see different things and I pull those out, which is why I usually get behind. We could draw a thread from this sentence to several other threads within that tie it all together, all right? So, secret sin, those sad mysteries we hide from our nearest and dearest and try to conceal from ourselves, all right? Even forgetting that God can detect them. So, we're told, and I don't remember if I got to this part the other day, each member of the congregation feels like Parson Hooper, delivering the sermon, sneaks up behind them, just behind their back, speaks into their ear, I know what you did. Just, look inside, look internally for a minute, something you've kept hidden, and he goes, gotcha. Put yourself in their shoes. Okay? Everyone from the youngest, most innocent girl to the most hardened-hearted SOB in this town. So, service ends, and we're told people can't wait to get out of the building. It's like a fire alarm has gone off. They're jostling and throwing elbows and fighting to get out, whereas normally everyone is staid and peaceful. They come out, they quietly exit the church building, and Parson Hooper follows them. He's the last one out. And usually we're told people mill around, they talk to him, they get his greeting, etc. One old guy, even every Sunday, invites Parson Hooper, to his home where he blesses the food and eats and all that. None of that happens. Now when he comes out, there are still people milling around, but they're, what'd you wear the veil for? What happened? And he nods to them just like he nodded to them coming in, but nobody says a word. Nobody wants to walk with him. Nobody wants to talk with him. The old guy completely forgets to invite him for dinner. And Parson Hooper walks slowly, alone, back to the parsonage, the home provided by the church community. And when he opens the door and goes in, he, for a brief moment, turns around and has this glimmering smile, we're told. A sad smile gleamed faintly from beneath the black veil. This is page 333, the end of the first paragraph. And disappears, glimmers as he disappears. So it gleams and glimmers. What does gleam mean? There's a brief shining, and something that glimmers doesn't last long. And a young woman says, how strange that a simple black veil, such as any woman might wear in her bonnet, should become such a terrible thing on Mr. Hooper's face. Notice, she's not weirded out by a black veil. She says any woman could wear that on her bonnet, hat, essentially. And her husband, who we are told is the physician of the village. So what does that mean, he's the physician? High status, upstanding, morally astute and good, intellectual, well-bred, well-trained, all those kinds of things. Okay? He said, well, something must surely be amiss with Mr. Hooper's intellects. But the strangest part of the affair is the effect of this vagary, that is, the strange veil, even on a sober-minded mind like myself. Sober-minded man like myself means I don't usually go in for nonsense. I don't usually get the willies or the heebie-jeebies from strange occurrences. He's telling us this thing has freaked me out. It's also telling us he's a little bit full of himself. Okay? He thinks more highly of himself than he does others. The black veil, though it covers only our pastor's face, throws its influence over his whole person, like it gives a power to all of him and makes him ghost-like from head to foot. Do you not feel it so? How does it make him ghost-like? Well, popular consciousness today, take that back. Popular consciousness then, how do ghosts appear? Does it just look like me walking around even though I'm dead? No, kind of fuzzy, kind of hazy, kind of shadowed, hidden, obscure. So why does the guy say this? Or why does Hawthorne put this language in? What are they going to do in a few hours? They have a funeral. Ah, ghost-like is appropriate. There's a corpse somewhere. The wife says, so do you not feel it? So he asks. That he seems ghost-like. Truly do I. I would not be alone with him for the world. I wonder he is not afraid to be alone with himself. Men sometimes are. What does that mean? I wouldn't want to be alone with him. She's not talking about sex or anything like that. She's talking about, it'd scare the living daylights out of me to be alone with this guy. With this. And then she says, I wonder if he's not afraid to be alone with himself. Notice she doesn't say alone by himself. What's the difference between by and with? Prepositions are really important. With implies like Mr. Hooper, and over here himself. By himself is just Mr. Hooper. How can you be with yourself? You ever heard of the phrase, get with it? It kind of means join the party or become aware of what's going on. Being with yourself means being totally aware of yourself. And the guy, her husband says, men sometimes are so, that is afraid to be by themselves. So, the afternoon service, that's telling us there's usually a morning service and an afternoon service. There's a funeral for a young woman who had died. We don't know how she died. We don't know when she died. We don't know her age. Okay? Mr. Hooper comes in, he's wearing a black veil. Totally appropriate, right? You don't wear bright colored clothing to funerals. Black is the color, traditionally, this goes back thousands of years. It's the color of mourning. Okay? Entirely appropriate. So we're told, he goes up to the coffin to take his last farewell. In some branches of Christianity, you have what's called the last kiss, or the last farewell, where you pay your last respects to that person, all right? In the Orthodox Church I'm part of, if you want to, you're not required to, people will go up and will kiss the corpse. It's literally the last kiss you will give to that person. So he goes up to pay his respects. He's got his veil on, and what happens? His veil's like this. Sorry, have to make it so it doesn't cover the mouth. Veil's like this, and he bends over, and what has the veil just done? It opens up, so he can see the body, and if the body's eyes could open and see, the body can see him. And we're told. The veil hung straight down from his forehead. This is the middle of the long paragraph on 333 at the bottom. Hung straight down from his forehead, so that if her eyelids had not been closed forever, the dead maiden might have seen his face. Could Mr. Hooper be fearful of her glance that he so hastily caught back the black veil? It falls open, and he very quickly pulls it back up. And then we're told, someone said that when that veil fell open, the body twitched. Now, we all, maybe you don't, you will now. We all know, after someone dies, their body doesn't stop entirely doing stuff. It will twitch. There will still be electrical things going on in the synapses. Muscles will loosen. Gas in the body will get released. Sometimes this can last up to 24 hours after the person is deceased. Okay? And that person starts spreading this around. And then we get told, oh, the person who saw this was a superstitious old woman. What does that little detail about the old woman being superstitious possibly indicate or suggest? If you're superstitious, what does it mean? You'll believe anything. You'll see things that aren't there. Okay? But then we started hearing about other people saying, yes, I saw it too. Okay? So, they go from the chamber that has the coffin back into the main room of the meeting house, and the parson delivers his funeral prayers. And we're told, bottom of that page, it was a tender and heart-dissolving prayer, full of sorrow, yet so imbued with celestial hopes that the music of a heavenly harp swept by the fingers of the dead seemed faintly to be heard among the saddest accents of the minister. How do we know people weren't literally hearing harp music? Because it seemed faintly to be heard. Seemed is a verb that indicates a condition contrary to fact. Okay? Gotta be careful who I pick for this. I usually pick Trump because it's a good example. I don't care your opinions of Trump. And even Trump's most ardent supporters would say this. Donald Trump seems like a very humble person. Nobody would say, well, that's true. The statement is a condition contrary to fact. Okay? So, the people trembled, though they but darkly understood him. That is, he's praying, and the people are sitting in their pews, and they're shaking. And we're told they but darkly understood him. If you didn't have the adverb darkly, what would the sentence mean? They understood him. He spoke, they got it. But they darkly understand him means they don't really. They get some of what he's getting at, but not entirely. And it's only with the next clause are we told what it is they darkly understand. When he prayed, lost my place, that they and himself and all of mortal race might be ready, as he trusted this young maiden had been for the dreadful hour that should snatch the veil from their faces. What do they darkly understand? What the hell is he talking about? What veil will be snatched from our faces? He says that, and they probably look around and go, you're not wearing a veil. You're not wearing a veil. I'm not wearing one. What? What does he mean? What is that dreadful hour that will snatch the veil from their and his faces? And not just theirs and his, all mortal race. What's the dreadful hour? It's not actually an hour. Death. How is death a veil? What do veils do? They separate something here from something there, or they hide something there. What does death do? It hides what is beyond. Hamlet is going to, in a famous speech that is not a soliloquy, Hamlet is going to say, talking about suicide and such, that death is the undiscovered country from whose bourne no one ever returns. It's unknown. Death is not like this door, in other words. Close it all the way. Death is not like this door. This door. Why do I specify this door? What can you do with that door right now? All of you are doing it. and go, doesn't look so bad. What do you have to do to see it to death? Open the door and go through. You gotta die. You don't get a return. For the vast majority of people. I don't know what your, life after death experience is kind of thing. Okay? That's the veil. In this context, that's not what the veil of the minister's black veil necessarily means. So notice what the veil there does. It separates life here from death beyond. Okay? And they're like, whoosh. They don't get what he's talking about. Notice, he trusted she was ready. She was prepared for that dreadful hour. Okay? So, and notice what death does, by the way. Look at the verb. It snatches the veil. It pulls it back. Okay? So, the bearers pick up the coffin. They make their way to the cemetery. Parson Hooper walks behind. People look around every now and then, and they see him. And one person says, what are you looking at? It's like he's walking with the dead girl. Looks like the dead girl's walking in. Yeah, I thought so too. Later on that evening, they have another service. This one's for what? A marriage. Long time ago, before he was 45 or 50, my dad had been a preacher for, I don't remember how long, 10 or 15 years, maybe 20 years, something like that. And he had one suit actually, because we were poor. And his one suit, he jokingly called his marrying and burying suit, because that's the only time he wore it. He didn't wear it to preach, that kind of stuff. Just those two instances. So now they have a marriage, a wedding. And everybody's thinking, surely he's not going to wear it to the wedding. Yep, there it goes. Shows up dressed all in black. Black veil too. Okay? He walks in, and we're told the first thing they see, page 334, first long paragraph, about middle way through it, is the black veil had added a deeper gloom, which had added a deeper gloom to the funeral and could portend nothing but evil to the wedding. Such was its immediate effect on the guest that a cloud seemed to have rolled duskily from beneath the black cape. Like he comes in the room, which is brightly lit with candles and maybe kerosene lamps, but probably just candles. He walks in the room, and it's like suddenly somebody hits the dimmer switch, and all the candles, lose some of their light, as if he brings this cloud, this darkness with him. And it dims the light of the candles. In English customary belief, and bear in mind, Puritans in mid-18th century America are, for all intents and purposes, English. Even though some of them their families might have been there for a couple of generations, people who came over on the Mayflower and stuff. Their customs, their traditions are English. Well, in English tradition, if a couple gets married and the candles that the couple have in the wedding, the tradition is the bride would have a candle, the groom would have a candle, and they would take those candles and together light a single candle. That single candle symbolizes their married life together. Well, if either of their candles or the single candle that they light goes out during the ceremony, poorly made, a gust of wind, something like that, that's a bad omen. That means one of two things. One of them is going to die, or they're both going to die. It's going to be a short marriage. The candle's dim. Not a good sign. Okay? So they stand up before him. He's getting ready to have them say their vows. She takes his hand in hers, or he takes her hand in his, either one. And we're told about their hands. How are her hands described? Cold. And then later we get her face described. Pale. Cold and pale. Images of what? Go back to the previous service. A corpse. Okay, when people do that in the Orthodox Church, one of the reasons a lot of people don't like to do that kiss of peace, the body that is in the coffin, it's cold. I don't mean it's cold like you when you get cold. It's like, even though it's not 32 degrees or colder, it feels, if you kiss it, it feels like ice. It feels really cold. All right? Her hand is cold. What's his hand doing? Shaking. And nerves. Get married, your wedding day, you might have some nerves. This isn't normal. Okay? And a lot of people think, she looks like the maiden who just died. Okay? So, they finish essentially the vows, and Mr. Hooper, and this could be one of two things. He's raising a cup because he's going to offer essentially a glass of wine like the chalice, like a communion wine, to the newly-wed husband and wife. They're going to drink from a common cup, again symbolizing their lives together. It could be that, or what else could it be? What else happens at weddings? Usually the thing that happens after the wedding, starts with an R. I can't remember. Reception, thank you. You have a toast. Toast is often given, first one, either by the best man or father of the bride. Okay? Well, maybe it's the person who prepared. Notice, he doesn't just take the wine goblet and do that. Because what can he not do by doing that? That we're told he does in here. He does this. He lifts it up in front of them. Why? Because he has to be able to see himself. And we're told. He raises the glass of wine to his lips, wishing happiness to the new married couple in a strain of mild pleasantry that ought to have brightened the features of the guests and others. He says something very lighthearted that should have made everybody happy. Like a cheerful gleam from the hearth, at that instant catching a glimpse. That is a momentary vision, a momentary sighting of his figure in the looking glass. The black veil involved his own spirit in the horror with which it overwhelmed all others. What has he just experienced? What everybody else experiences when they see him wearing the veil. In other words, he sees himself as others see him. That's pretty hard. Because what do we often tend to do around or about ourselves? We think we are what we think we are, but others often don't. Which is why criticism is so hard. Because we don't see ourselves the way others see us. His frame shuddered, his lips grow white. Why do his lips grow white? He's terrified. His frame shudders. He's holding the glass. He shakes. We're told he spills the wine. Probably he drops the glass and runs out of the building. What has he just experienced? What they've been experiencing since the first thing that morning in seeing him. He's overwhelmed by this terror. Are we told what the terror is? No, we're not. We're told it's caused by the veil. Okay? So, next day, the whole town is talking about Parson Hooper. And they talk and talk and talk, but we're told it was remarkable that of all the busybodies and impertinent people in the parish, not one ventured to put the plain question to Mr. Hooper. Notice, it says, of all the busybodies and impertinent people. That implies there's a lot of people in the town of Milford that are busybodies or impertinent. What's a busybody? You've all known them. Someone who sticks their nose in other people's business. They don't mind their own business. They have to know what's going on, okay? Impertinent is they don't know when to shut up. They say things they shouldn't say. They address people in ways they should not be addressed. And generally it means from, someone from a lower status of some sort, maybe a lower educational status, lower social, to a higher status. That is, you're not equals, okay? None of them do what? Parson Hooper, can we talk? Can you tell us why you're wearing the veil? None of them do that. They would rather what? Talk about it. But his fiancée does. Page 335. There was one person, we're told, paragraph 25, unappalled by the awe with which the black veil had impressed all beside herself. The narrator has just told us she's the only one who isn't affected by it the way everybody else is. Oh, look. Hopper's got on a veil. Interesting. She doesn't get freaked out about it. Okay? So, she goes to him. Knocks on the door, takes a seat when he invites her in, looks at him carefully, and she says, middle of page 335, there is nothing terrible in this piece of crepe except that it hides a face, which I'm always glad to look upon. There's nothing about the piece of cloth in and of itself that is fearsome. It's just a piece of cloth. But it is a piece of cloth, we're going to be told, while in and of itself it's cloth, it is tied to, connected to something else as a symbol. All right? The word symbol literally means to be cast with, to be thrown with. Okay? The with part is important. Think of a symbol as like a fishing hook. You put it on the line, you attach it to a reel, you cast it, but you don't lose it. It's still connected, okay, to you. It's different than something that is diabolic or a diabol. Diabolic means what? It splits the thing. It's not with the thing, all right? So, she says, take off the veil and tell me what it means. Notice the order. First, lay aside your veil. Then, tell me why you put it on. Why that order? I want to see your face. She doesn't say, tell me why you put it on, then take it off. She wants it to be off while he speaks. There is an hour to come when all of us shall cast aside our veils. Take it not amiss, beloved friend, if I wear this piece of crepe till then. Now, on one level, that was pretty clear, right? Could that be misunderstood? I will not take this off until what? The hour when we shall all cast aside our veils. So I will not take this off, that's all clear. What is unclear? When is the hour when we shall cast aside our veils? And notice what he's just said with that language. I'm not the only one wearing a veil. We all wear veils. We heard him suggest at the funeral of the young woman that she approached the hour where the veil is lifted, and he thought she was prepared for it, and he prays that all of us will be ready for it. Okay? Your words are a mystery too. In other words, the veil's a mystery, your words are a mystery. take away the veil from them at least. He says, I will. Go back to what he says about the dead woman. He says something to the effect of, no, it's not there. It's one of the times when the veil is referred to as darkly. St. Paul said in Book of Corinthians, chapter 15, I think. He says, now we see but through a glass darkly. He says, but then we shall see face to face and know as we are known. What's the now and what's the glass darkly? Now, down here, we see through as a glass darkly. He means our vision is obscured. We don't see things clearly. But he says then, and the then that he's talking about is in the resurrection, the life to come. He says, then we will see clearly. We will see as though face to face, and we will know as we are known. We will know ourselves as God knows us. And it's also implied, and we will know each other perfectly. In other words, I will be an open book to you, and you will be open books to me. We'll know perfectly, okay? So, he says, I will. I'll explain my words. As far as my vow may suffer me. What vow? Have we seen him make a vow anywhere? Have we seen him fall on his knees? Oh, great and mighty, dreadful being, I will make this vow. Nope. He says, okay, let me explain. The veil is a type and a symbol, and I'm bound to wear it ever, both in light and darkness, in solitude and before the gaze of multitudes, as a stranger, so with my familiar friends. No mortal eye will see it withdrawn. This dismal shade must separate me from the world. Even you, Elizabeth, can never come behind it. Did he explain what the veil is? No. He says it's a type and it's a symbol. What is meant by those two words? The first one is language used in biblical interpretation. A 17th or 18th century audience would have understood the meaning of this word perfectly clear. Why? Because they understood, because they went to church, because they were required by the law to go to church. Okay? Not as much in the colonies, though some of the colonies did, as in England. In England, you were required by law to go to church. You were required by law to pay tithe, etc., to the church. So, within the church tradition, there were characters, figures in the Old Testament that were called types. That is, they pointed to. They were like guideposts or road signs, pointing to somebody in the future. The somebody in the future is Jesus in the New Testament. So you have these characters in the Old Testament that aren't Jesus, but in one sense they're kind of like Jesus. They typify Jesus. Anybody take a guess as to one? Major names from the history of the Jews. We just had Christmas, that points to Jesus. Pretty soon, in the calendar of the church here, the season of Lent is going to come up. Okay? Lent is concluded with Easter. Easter is the fulfillment of an event, okay, that kind of begins in the Old Testament, or that is typified by an event in the Old Testament. Easter is called, its other name is Pascha, which means, don't do that. Train of thought just totally derailed. Pascha, which means, not Exodus, it's the overcoming, Passover, sorry, Passover, the Jewish Passover. What does Passover refer to? Two things, actually. One of them, the big one, the other one, very minor. When the angel of death passed over the Israelites' homes in Egypt as one of the 10 plagues that Moses called down upon them. The second part is what other Passover? The Red Sea. Okay? So, the type I'm referring to, Moses. He's the deliverer. He delivers the Hebrews, Israelites, Jews, out of bondage in Egypt, ultimately to where? Where do all the others go in, but he doesn't? Well, all the others who were born during the 40 years wandering, but, Moses and the others don't. The promised land, Israel. How's he a type of Jesus? What does Jesus do according to traditional Christian theology? He leads Christians out of the bondage into sin into the promised land of heaven. Okay? David is a type of Jesus. Points to friend of God. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Samson. Samson, he's sleeping around with all kinds of women, he's got all the strength. How's he a type? How does he end his life? He dies for the Jews by destroying the Philistines and the temple of Dagon and the god Dagon. Like Christ sacrifices his life to destroy the gods, the powers of the air, all that kind of stuff, in granting life to the Christians and such. So it's a type. It points to something. It's also a symbol. It is in and of itself a piece of cloth, but it is connected to a deeper meaning, another meaning. I didn't say this in any of my other two courses about this. Anybody knows what happens at the moment when Christ says on the cross, "It is finished," and dies? Something happens back in the temple. Between what's called the Holy of Holies, the most holy place of the temple, and the rest of the temple that everybody can go into, there's a big veil, giant curtain. It's ripped from top to bottom. It's not ripped from people down at the bottom, ripping it top to bottom. It's opened from heaven to earth. Okay? Another veil. So, it's a type and symbol. She says, "What grievous affliction hath befallen you? What has happened to you?" Notice, the language she uses makes him sound like a victim. Something horrible has happened to him. And then she says, "that you should thus darken your eyes forever." Now that part makes him active, makes him the agent. He's intentionally darkening his eyes. Ooh, I never thought about that before. Been teaching this story for 30 years. I've never made this connection. We're going to read in a few weeks. Not a few weeks, 2 weeks. The play Oedipus the King, or Oedipus the King. Oedipus does a bunch of really bad stuff, unintentionally. And at the end of the play, should I tell you that? Yeah, it doesn't matter. He gouges his eyes out. He blinds himself. And he does that because he's been mentally, spiritually blind all his life. Okay? Hawthorne was very well read. I would bet you dollars to donuts he's got this idea here. What horrible thing has happened that you've done this to yourself? Why are you making yourself blind, so to speak? Listen to his response. "If it be a sign of mourning, if it might not be, if it be a sign of mourning, I, perhaps like other mortals, have sorrows dark enough to be typified by a black veil. If this is an indication of mourning, who doesn't have stuff in their past to mourn over? You know, we could get around, make a nice little drum circle kind of thing and start sharing. And I'll bet every person in here has some horrible thing in your past. Not necessarily a horrible thing that you've done, but a horrible thing that has happened to you or your family that you could talk about. He says, could be that. But what if the world doesn't think that that's the case? What if people think, oh no, poor Mr. Hoopy had this horrible thing happen to him? What's her point? What if they think it's because you've done something horrible? Like the guy in the footnote at the beginning. Mr. Moody of Troy, Maine, who accidentally killed a friend. So he puts on this veil. She says, at least for the dignity of your office, your preacherness, for lack of a better word, take it off. He says, if I hide my face for sorrow, there is cause enough. And if I cover it for secret sin, what mortal might not do the same? You're right, Elizabeth. Maybe I am hiding my face because of some dark, secret sin I've committed. What's the second part of his statement mean? Story from the Bible. Only this one apparently is a real story. That is, it's not a parable. Jesus is outside the temple one day, and a bunch of men, I think the Pharisees, bring in a woman. She's probably naked. And throw her at his feet and say, this woman was found in adultery. Go away, Siri. What should we do to her? The law commands that she be stoned. What do they do? They're trying to trap Jesus. What does Jesus do? What probably the most enigmatic verse in the entire Bible. Nobody knows what it means. He bends down onto the ground and writes with his finger in the dirt. We don't know what he writes. None of the gospel writers explain it. Nobody talks about it. Okay? But what does he say to the people? Anybody know? Let him who is without sin cast the first stone. Oh, you want to stone her because she was caught in adultery. Okay, then let the first one of you who has never sinned, you throw the first rock. Damn it, Jesus. They were really looking forward to this. He just convicted them. Why? He's essentially said, in other words, he's drawn a symbol between her and them. Okay, you caught her physically in the act. What about you? What sins have you committed? Should we stone you? What mortal might not do the same? What's his point? If I'm wearing this because of some secret sin, guess what? We're all wearing these veils. We just don't see them. Why? Because we've all got things we hide. She keeps trying, he keeps, pushing back. And we're told, top of 336. Though of a firmer character than his own, the tears rolled down her cheeks. What does that mean? A firmer character than his own. She's got a spine. Elizabeth isn't one of those women who in the first, sermon that he delivered had to rush out of the hall because of her delicate nerves. This is a tough woman. Tougher than him. Okay? And she's got tears rolling down her face. And we're told, in an instant, as it were, a new feeling took the place of sorrow. The tears are for sorrow for him. She's mourning. She's weeping for him. Until her eyes were fixed insensibly on the black veil, when, like a sudden twilight in the air, its terrors fell around her. She arose and stood trembling before it. What does that mean that her eyes are fixed insensibly on the veil? Have you ever had an experience where you're drawn to something and you're not even aware that you're staring? For a lot of people my age, or people that are 5 or 10 years older than you, being transfixed to the TV at 10 o'clock in the morning on 9/11, that was one of those events. I couldn't pull myself away. I canceled classes. I mean, I was just, how can this be? Let's use a different image. Imagine if suddenly, first of all, imagine those shades were all the way up. And I'm standing here talking, and you're sitting here listening or not listening, and suddenly, outside and in here, blackness. Or even leave the lights on in here. But out there, it went pitch black. That blackness would come into here. That darkness would come into here. What would your reaction be? I mean, pitch black. Like nighttime without any stars or moon or street lights or anything like that. What would the effect be? I don't know about you. I'd be scared you know what, Liz. Why? Because that ain't normal. I'm not talking like an eclipse. It just suddenly pitch black. That would probably be an indicator of, we've got seconds to live, folks. That could only be, something happened to the sun in order for it to get that kind of dark. Okay? That is what she experiences. Her eyes are fixed insensibly. She's not focusing. Because when you focus, your intention is, that's not what's happening. It's like she's glued to it. She can't break away. And its terrors fall around her. What has just happened to her, metaphorically? She now has the veil around her. Look at what he says. And do you feel it then at last? Modern word to describe that. Gotcha. Now you know what it's like. What's the it? And do you feel it? What's the it? The effect of the veil? Or what the veil means? What's the it? If it went suddenly pitch black, would you be able to see me? Nope. You could hear me, but you wouldn't be able to see me. He says, be patient. Have patience with me. Do not desert me, though this veil must be between us here on earth. Be mine, and hereafter, that is, when we're dead, Christianly speaking, within a Christian tradition, which means when we're really alive, what? There won't be any veil over my face. No darkness between our souls. Ooh, he's just told us something. There's what? Between their souls. There's darkness. I don't mean darkness like some kind of evil. What's meant by darkness? There's a separation between their souls. And it's not just the veil. The veil is what? It's an emblem, remember? It's a mysterious emblem. It's a symbol. It points to, it indicates something. If there's something between their souls, then their souls are what? Separated. Okay, maybe it's because they're not married yet. And the two shall become one. That doesn't mean their souls become one. It means the bodies become one. Lift the veil once, she says, and look me in the face. Never. See ya. And she leaves. What happens to that darkness between their souls when she leaves? It gets darker. Their souls become more separated. Years go by. What happens during those intervening years? People come from far and wide to listen to Parson Hooper deliver sermons. It's like they want to come be convicted. They want to come and have hell scared out of them. Not the fire and brimstone, but by the power of his words and the sentiment and such. And we're told towards the bottom of that page, 336, last 3 lines from the bottom, it was said that ghost and fiend consorted with him. With self-shudderings and outward terrors, he walked continually in its shadow, that is the veils, groping darkly with his own soul or gazing through a medium that saddened the whole world. All right? Last page. He's on his deathbed. People are surrounding his deathbed. A couple of ministers. The minister of Westbury comes up. Venerable Father Hooper. What does venerable mean? Okay, first of all, these 2 words, venerable and father, are not usually used in the language to describe Puritan preachers. Those are older, much older terminology from Christian tradition. Venerable means worthy of being venerated. Venerated does not mean worshipped, but it does mean put up on a pedestal and praised. All right? He says, the moment of your release is at hand. Are you ready for the lifting of the veil that shuts in time from eternity? There's another veil. You have time, notice, shut in from eternity. Time is like a ball. What separates the ball from everything outside the ball? The veil, the container that shuts time in from eternity. What's in eternity? Really only one thing, God. What is eternity? Literally, outside of time. See, time's a construct. Time is created. God is not constructed, not created outside of time. Are you ready to lift the veil? How do you lift the veil that goes from time to eternity? You die. That's the veil. In this context, in this particular line. Father Hooper, yes, my soul hath a patient weariness until that veil be lifted. Patient weariness, patient, long suffering, enduring. Patient, like a hospital patient, and to be patient, the 2 words are related. They both imply suffering. He has a weary suffering until that time comes. So the Reverend says, and is it fitting that a man so given to prayer, blah, 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 famous example, holy indeed in thought, should go to the great beyond with what? With a shadow on his memory. Is it right that you should die with this little black spot that people always wondered, what did he do that made him put on the veil? Here's what you should do. Lift the veil. Lift the veil now with your dying breath and strength and face God. And he grabs, the minister, tries to lift the veil. Parson Hooper, with his dying strength, reaches up, grabs his hands, pulls that veil back down. Never. Dark old man. Dark there? What are you hiding? Evil is almost what it implies. With what horrible crime upon your soul do you go to meet your final judgment? And listen to what Hooper says. Why do you tremble at me alone? Why are you trembling, looking only at me? What's his point? Why the alone part? Why don't you tremble looking at each other? Or why don't you tremble looking at yourself in your mirror? Tremble also at each other. Have men avoided me, and women show no pity, and children screamed and fled just because of this? It's a rhetorical question. His point is, hell no. It's got nothing to do with this. What but the mystery which it obscurely typifies has made this piece of crepe so awful? And then he asks 3 questions. When the friend shows his inmost heart to his friend, or actually they're not questions, they're adverbs, adverbial phrases. When this happens, the friend shows his innermost heart to his friend. When the lover shows his innermost heart to his best beloved. When this is general, all of humanity, does not shrink from the eye of his Creator, loathsomely treasuring up the secret of his sin, that is trying to keep something hidden from God, then deem me a monster. Then shy away from me. Then run screaming from me. Well, when are all those three things going to happen? Do they happen here? No. Friends don't totally reveal themselves to their friends. Lovers don't totally reveal themselves to their beloveds. No one totally reveals oneself to God. He says, then deem me a monster for the symbol beneath which I have lived and died. I look around me and behold a black veil, on every visage a black veil. What's he mean? Because he sees through the black veil? No. He's saying, damn it, every one of you is wearing a black veil. They kind of look around. What's he mean? Everyone does what? Hides. Everyone has something they don't let others know about. What's his point? We should. We should be like the open book. Maybe not to ever, I shouldn't come in here, first thing, hey, how you guys doing? How would you do this weekend? Here's what I did. That's not what he means. But dearest friends to dearest friends, lovers, husbands, what? Yeah. God? Yes. Okay. That's his point. So what is the veil? The veil has multiple meanings. Okay? Within the context of the story. All right, we'll stop there. Faulkner's barn burning for Monday. The quiz is now live. It went live last night at 11:59. You have until Sunday evening. It's the extra credit quiz. It's 10 points. You have 10 minutes to complete it. Okay? No book, no notes, that kind of stuff. All right, have a good weekend.